Everything we have to continue to work on it now. My name is Paul James. I host the news every morning.
And the Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, dear brothers and sisters. Like I said the last show, that we are really at a very critical moment. The moment is so critical that we are hit on the left-hand side pandemic that has never been recorded in history. We never know what it is. We never know what to do. We never know it is over or not. We never know there's going to second surge or third surge or whatsoever. And hopes are still nowhere to be found. And on the other hand, we are hit by ourselves. We see lots of black lives die unjustified. We see lots of demonstration asking for equality, for fair treatment. However, we see uprisings, we see lootings, and on the last page, we even see the topplings of some of the monuments, such as Robert Lee, such as Christopher Columbus, such as, any of the Confederation figures, right? Now, to get to the point, of course, the great part is involved with the initial factor. When people die unjustified, we need professional opinions. Speaking of that, we have Mr. Joe Gardner, a 27-year police officer of Santa Monica PD. Welcome, sir,
Thank
to the
you,
show.
sir, and hello to your audience.
Joe Gardner is a good friend of mine. Is big supporter to the community. Also, he's the chair of LA County Probation Committee, right? And by the way, in the discussion, we have to mention the part of American history in which we're going to touch the part of the indigenes of this land who were later driven away by the whites. So by that, I believe Mr. Joe Gardner has 50% of his blood of being Indians,
Yeah.
a native. So you're double welcome.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
And next to him is my old friend, who you know already, Mr. Chris Nebe, very famous director of Hollywood with as many credits as 25 films behind him. And his monument is taller than himself. Most of the time, he goes to the archives. I call him the archives man because in order to do films of quality, he has to go back and forth in between present time and history, from which we learn, we get answers to the questions of today. To you, welcome to the show.
谢谢你。
All right, I'll start with my friend Joe Gardner from a police perspective. From a police protocol, how did Lloyd Johnson die?
George Floyd, you mean?
I'm sorry, George Floyd, because there are so many of them.
Yes. Yeah, it was a horrible circumstance. It never should have happened. I think what took place is a travesty. The individual, Derek Chauvin, who's the police officer from Minnesota, did a great disservice to mankind and did a great disservice to law enforcement in general. I think he's ultimately going to pay a significant price for what took place in the killing of Mr. Floyd, and I'm saddened that it took place and caused all this social disruption throughout our country.
To my friend Chris Nebe, lots of people say the death of George Floyd was an accident. Do you agree? Was it an accident?
No, not an accident.
Why wasn't it an accident?
Why it was not an accident? Because you have, you see it, 9 minutes, you see intentional, a white police officer doing something he shouldn't have done. And you have people standing around him, and it's just a travesty, as Mr. Gardner said. And it's very sad because this gives the police a bad name. But this is just a few police officers, while others, the majority,
Will not
is very
stop
good.
you.
Yeah.
And to Joe, according to your police protocol, though, do you believe that Derek Chauvin performed what with his knees on the neck is justified?
No, not at all. I mean,
Not at
you're
all.
only supposed to exercise just enough force to control the situation. And obviously, he went far beyond that.
Okay.
You should never do that to anybody.
To your judgment, though, if he let the knee off the neck, will George Floyd be able to start running again?
I understand he was under control. He was already handcuffed.
All right.
So
And to
would
your
say not.
understanding, as a police officer, for 27 years though, was that officer Derek in danger, imminent danger to be killed?
No, I don't believe so.
All right, now, so why would he put a knee on his neck to do what?
I don't know. As to demonstrate some control, Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd apparently had some kind of previous history. They worked together at some nightclub or some entertainment venue, and they've known each other for many years. And so there's probably more to what happened.
Suppose Mr. George Floyd was a bad guy. Suppose he was a prisoner. Suppose he was on death row on the way to his own gas chamber. Would anybody perform a knee to kill him before?
No, not at all.
So totally unjustified. All right.
Yes.
Now, with all these together, if I say the officer Derek Chauvin has a purpose, has a wishfulness to kill, do you agree?
Yes, but we will never know because he will never reveal why he did this, and it is not important, really. The fact is...
No. I want to find something.
Yes.
Right. Just follow my lead.
Yes?
Yes. Right. Okay. Now, do you think the officer, in his mind, had his determination of killing at that moment of 9.5 minutes?
I don't think it was intended that he wanted to kill somebody. I mean, if he was trained and applied what he learned as being an officer for 18 years, he would have never done that. But I think internally, it's hard to say what his mindset was. But clearly, he went outside of those boundaries of proper.
The first 7 minutes, obviously, we heard George Floyd screaming
Right.
and twisting something like that because he was dying, of course, right? And then, starting the 8 minutes, there's no movement at all, no screaming at all. Would an officer with training that many years, though, understanding from your protocol, to learn to get the signal that this guy is dead, this guy is dying?
Right.
Do you agree with me?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it seemingly totally escaped Officer Chauvin. He could have gotten off Mr. Floyd and checked him to see if he was okay, and that didn't seem to happen.
There are different versions of the clip. The clip I saw runs 9.5 minutes, and the most prevailing was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and there are even shorter ones. But from this one, I was watching, of course, it was precisely shot on the spot, right? And starting the 8th minute, there's no movement, no screaming at all.
Right.
If by that moment, if the officer let go the knee and practice some kind of CPRs, will life be saved?
Oh, I
He
think
rescued?
it'd be highly likely that Mr. Floyd
Highly
would
likely,
be.
right?
Yeah, he might be here today.
All right. And obviously, Mr. Chris Nebe, this officer refused to do any of those.
When you look at his face, which the camera caught, you can see the man is a psycho. The man is psychologically sick. He's a psychopath. And this is the reason why he did what he did, for whatever reason.
Okay, myself and a lot of my friends, after seeing that video clip, without any background, either policing or law or justice whatsoever, we came to a conclusion that this officer started with the intention of killing.
One might conclude that, of
Yeah,
course.
right.
It's
Very
all
good.
subjective,
Very
but
good,
I think...
very good, very
yeah.
good. Now, my dear friend, Joe Gardner, you stay with me as a brother for so many years. I love you, I respect you. And the other day I even joke here, you're the brother, my brother of the same mother or something like that, right? Okay. Going back into your history though, in the early days when Christopher Columbus and his white supremacies came to the land, to claim the land, to claim owner of the land, where did you guys go, as much as you learned from history?
Oh, the arrival, I guess, of Spaniards and others, discoverers of this continent, that it's not, it's clearly understood that there were a lot of things that were wrong about the people, the indigenous people that lived here first. And so, it bothers a lot. It bothers me to see that, people who lived on this land long before the arrival of foreigners from Europe own this land. They worked the land. They survived on the land. And then for someone else to come in and just essentially take over the land is
Thank you very much.
travesty.
Thank you very much. My dear friends, we take a short moment now. We come back to continue finding from that page of history to combine the two pages together to come to a conclusion. Stay with us. Just bear with us. We'll be right back.
Everything. We continue to work on it now. Their name is called James. I host English news reporting.
And a golden angel award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, lovely audiences, my dear brothers and sisters. Like I said, not only the moment is critical, the subject is very critical, because we today, I seem to be very excited because I have these two gentlemen, each of them representing his own field of expertise, right? To help me going into history to get the answer to the questions, to the puzzles of today. To my friend Chris Nebe, and I know that you're not an archivist, but you perform like one, because looking at your film, such as Unit 733, such as Flying Tiger, the Burma Road, such as the Diaoyu Island, so on and so forth, you must have gone through lots of the archives. So, in that part, speaking of that devil though, how much do you know about the indigenous of this land being driven, killed, slaughtered all the way by the white supremacists in the early days?
Yeah, these white supremacists were authorized by the Catholic Church in 1493, after Columbus discovered the Western Hemisphere. Spain was at that time the most powerful nation in Europe, and the Pope authorized them with a doctrine of discovery, which basically ordered them or morally authorized them to discover the new lands in the name of Spain. The indigenous people were to be subjugated and to be made Catholic, and if they didn't do that, then they could do with them what they wanted. But even if they became Catholic, they were still second-class citizens. That was basically the message of the doctrine of discovery. So equipped with this moral authorization, these low-level Europeans, adventurers, came here and just did what they want. And that is a tragedy, and you see, the world is full of tragedies like this. This is the animal instinct of us, where the strong kill the weak.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. To my friend Joe Gardner, I had my education half in China, half here. And the part of the knowledge about the indigenous, I knew nothing when I was in China. I learned it from here. When I first discovered that piece of history, I was so shocked. And I went on, read lots of books, including some novels, right, of that background. And I cried, believe me, I cried a lot. I cried a lot. And especially when I was at the part where the government did put 100 silver dollars to a head of Indian man. 80 for an Indian man 18 above. 80 something of 60 above, and a woman, whatever, all priced. I was so shocked, and I wouldn't believe that was in the recent human history of civilization. Now, I believe.
And it's important to realize that the Indians welcomed these Europeans.
Yeah, of course.
They did not, because they were astonished that all of a sudden these white people came. So you see, this is even more awful, because you were basically killing and murdering, mass slaughtering your hosts.
All right, thank you very much for pointing that out, because you never never bite on the fingers that feed you.
Right.
That's what we understand. In Chinese, our proverb say that when you drink water, always think about who dug the well, something like that. To Mr. Gardner, myself, question is that, do you agree with the part of the knowledge that I learned about the indigenous?
Yes, I do. I mean, as and Chris says it very, very clearly and succinctly, and you bring up the same thing. You know, what took place, you know, during that time period many centuries ago, just it devastated people. And along with that, brought disease from outside into a land that was pristine and clean, and many thousands of indigenous people passed away. And as I start to scratch the surface, and I want to learn more, because I recently discovered that I am Native American, I become more and more saddened about some of the accounts and stories that I read of what happened to my people.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I love the term "my people," and it's my people too. All right. My dear friend, I want to make one point clear. Even though I dug out this many information about the early days, how the white supremacies treated the Indians, the native Indians, the indigenous, that doesn't mean that I agree with the topple of the statue of Christopher Columbus, because that's part of history. You don't want fight against history. All you want is to learn from history. I did this as a preface to pave the ground to continue with the discussion, talking about what we learned from history. What had happened in history never gets a chance to repeat, right? Okay, now, what I got from that moment of history was the concept. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
all right? From the bottom of the mind to certain of the white supremacies, the culture of killing, of claiming the owner of the land remains. It is still, quote unquote, my land, until now. into the mind of Officer Derek Chauvin. What is that? Derek Chauvin,
Chauvin, yeah.
right? The Derek Chauvin. At that very moment, the culture, my land, must function. Do you not agree with me?
Of course, to some extent, I do agree with you. You know, our culture has been tainted probably by history and also by maybe social media, the news media. Chris could probably, you know, discuss further about why we are the way we are, and I think obviously we need to change.
By the way, this doctrine of discovery, which is very important to talk about because it's still on the books of the Vatican, and that also is the origin of slavery, because it permitted the white person to go there and say, I'm better than you, you're second class, now you work for me. And that's the whole package is until today. We are witnessing it all out there. And that is the typical thing, the white man kneeling on the black person, subjugating, like the white man has plundered the so-called third world.
Thank you very much. I really admire the fact that why can't we make a team? Because we think the same way. Okay, now, the part of history, how you people were treated as the indigenous in the first chapter of this book is one. And of course, when you guys were driven, slaughtered, killed, pushed over, all the way to the Pacific, until California, until the Rocky Mountains, west of Rocky Mountains, there is no more to kill, right? There is no more to kill.
Like
and
the buffalo.
there was no more to work. Then there came the plantations, the sugarcane plantation, the cotton plantation, the tomato plantation, all kinds of plantation, especially cotton plantation. So they need work. They need workers. So they started shiploads after shiploads after shiploads of the black guys to the land to work for them. So lots of people, including our founding fathers, George Washington, Christopher Jefferson, they were all slave owners. That doesn't mean I agree to go against them. I'm talking about in history, that part of my land continued, if I quote from him, from that piece of culture, that first the indigeneity, then the black, that takes a greater part of history till 1880 or 1890 or 1900 or later, if not till the day to Martin Luther King. The culture of my land continues. Do you, my dear brother of the same mother, agree with me? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, and you see this discrimination continues because, for example, this constant terrifying news you have from the border, the south of the border, this is very terrible because all the brown people here are actually also being used because they are being the farm labor, they are being, wherever the manual labor is, it's brown people. And I don't understand why there is not a sensible visa system for a 1-year work visa with the instruction you cannot break your family, but you can come here. It has never been done because it serves those people in power. And the people in power in this country are the white people. Don't ever forget that.
All right, that is my point, exactly my point. Thank you for summing up. My good brother, and the third culture is a tradition that we are so good at biting the finger that fed us. First, we bit the fingers of Indians. He mentioned, right? The guys from Mayflower, right? When they first landed the land, and it was the native, the indigenous, who offered them the first food. right? And it was, we later bit the finger that fed us. And then with the black slaves who helped us with our cottons in the plantation, shiploads after shiploads after shiploads of them, we bit the fingers that fed us again. And then in 1860, when the railroad workers from China, the Chinese coolies, came here to build the land, to build the freeway, and we later bit the fingers on them. Right. All the way. Now, can you confirm to some of the white folks the culture of beating fingers that fit ourselves is a tradition?
Well, I think, we have a long, soiled history. And I was going to bring up the Chinese people.
Let's take a moment.
Yeah.
And I need you to make a longer statement.
Sure.
Okay, we will be right back, my dear friends.
Called James. I host news every morning.
And a golden angel award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience, dear brothers, sisters. We're trying so hard to make a point. However, the point is almost there. Okay, now, I'm not saying that I'm supportive of any side. I'm talking about I want to be fair to ourselves, to current, to the past, and even to history, right? Now, with me is my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, chairman of the LA County Probation Committee, former Santa Monica PD officer for 27 glorious years. And after retirement, he picked up another job being the president of the organizer of a program that helps the needy people with food called Meals on Wheels for so many years. And he's a character I admire so much. Give him a gun, a badge, he's the one fighting on the street. Give him a wheel, he will be the one driving around Meals on Wheels. All right, perfect guy. Thank you very much for servicing us. Right now,
very kind.
And with my friend, Mr. Chris Nebe, I believe he is one of the smartest guy on the global earth, and he has. I'm really borrowing your wisdom, right, in helping me going into history to find out the conclusion, which says, black and white, that to some of the people, of the folks, unfortunately, the residuals of culture, my land still remains. Right. Now, Joe was in making a statement when we reached the end of the last segment. I'll come back to Joe, please.
Oh, we were beginning to talk about the Chinese immigrants. You talked about the coolies who helped build the railroad, in the 1800s. And it's, it was really a sad time that many of those people were exploited. And just as Chris talked about today, present day, we have, the Mexican culture, in fact, the immigrants from south of our border who are constantly exploited, paid little money for the efforts and their labor. And, I think we have a systemic problem with the way we handle immigration issues, allowing people to come here and work legally and then perhaps have a pathway to citizenship if they choose to stay here and want to be a good citizen. I mean, throughout our history, many cultures were exploited, from the Italians and on the East Coast to, the Irish. It's just man, especially in our nation, seemingly has a mindset of wanting to exploit those that they deem as weaker. And it's really sad to see that.
Thank you very much. That's very good, very sounding statement. Thank you very much. I love you better for that. And Chris, you want to make up a little bit?
Yeah, you see, America is also in a transition, because for decades and centuries, they imported or they allowed immigration because they needed cheap labor. And now these immigrants by nature multiply more than the white one, and the so-called people of color are now starting to overtake the white population. So in America, we are witnessing right now a fight, a racial situation, because the white man who came here and said, my land, my land, my land, now is all of a sudden becoming into a secondary position. And in the future, it will be probably that the white people will be a minority. And these people are defending it. And I give you a perfect example which tells you everything. Recently in Michigan or something, there was a white supremacist, fully armed, like this, going into the city hall, white, all white. I guarantee you, if these people would have been black, they would all have been arrested right away. In that case, they were white, nothing happened.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And that's why I say it's not a prejudice. It is the discrimination still remain at the bottom of their value system of some unfortunately, of the guys.
Not
right?
some, a huge minority.
Let's be conservative.
Yeah.
Let's say some. All right. However, that much said, that doesn't mean that I support an uprising, I support revenge, that I support looting, rioting, burning, flip over cars, beating people. I totally against. From a police protocol, from your career point of view, how do you define peaceful demonstration, protest, and the violence?
Well, as I said before, mankind has a tendency to be exploitative. And what you saw take place, and in fact, my dear city of Santa Monica, where 75 businesses were looted and vandalized, and 260 other businesses were affected by the rioting that took place. Probably 2 weeks ago, we saw some major devastation in the city of Santa Monica. And what you had were two elements. You had an element of people who wanted to peacefully, and as they should be allowed to under the First Amendment, come there and protest a major issue, an issue that everybody should be angry about. And then you also had a separate element of people who wanted to exploit the situation to begin a process of violence, rioting, and ultimately vandalism and looting. So
worse than vandalism.
Yeah, right. Pharmacies were broken into, all the drugs taken. Well, that's not so much an issue of peaceful protest, it's an issue of out and out theft. And they're going to resell all those drugs on the underground market. So it's going to create a significant issue in the months to come.
So as police officers, should you act strong, tough, hardcore, or should you back up because some officers did something wrong previously?
No, I think you have to make sure you restore order. Unfortunately, in the city of Santa Monica, there was a need to have 5 different police agencies there, including the National Guard. You had the neighboring cities of Beverly Hills, Pacific Division, LAPD, the Santa Monica Police itself, which was overwhelmed, the Sheriff's Department, all coming in to restore some sort of order or control. And
they did the right thing, right?
Right.
Okay. So if you were a policeman or if you were a police commander, what would you deal with the rioting in your area?
Arrest all the looters. Try to arrest them. It's impossible, but I mean, but that would be because they are destroying the goodwill of all those who are marching for a right cause, and they are dragging that right cause into the dirt. And that is the problem of humanity, because everywhere that police officer who chokes George Floyd, the police officer who shoots the other guy who was asleep in front of a Wendy in the back, they're just a few of the bad apples. It's not the 1,000 police officers who are doing a job which is not always
Good
easy
point.
in a society
Good
which
point.
is armed to teeth. In America, for every citizen in America, there are 2 guns. This is nowhere in the world you have that. This is a country of violence. It was built on violence, and the violence continues.
All right. Thank you very much. That's a very good point. He mentioned only a few bad apples. You're not talking about a whole basket of apples. You're talking about only a few bad ones. And the looting, of course, the same thing. You're talking about some bad apples. You're not talking about the thousands of demonstrators who are demonstrating peacefully. Let's take a moment out. We come back to put all these together to find out. Of course, it's a very sad situation. However, is the sad situation being utilized or borrowed or espionaged whatsoever? So stay with us.
His name is called James. I host English news every morning.
And the Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, my dear brothers, sisters, my dear fellow Americans. Welcome back to the show with these wonderful friends of mine, Mr. Joe Gardner, chairman of the LA County Probation Officer, Probation Committee, and a former police officer of Santa Monica PD, and also Mr. Chris Nebe, #1 director of Hollywood, the smartest man on the global earth, with lots of good films that I admire so much. To both of you, I thank you with a salute. Thank you. Now, point. As I mentioned at the very end, we laid down so far the ground, right? We went by going first to history to find out who took advantage of the indigenous by killing them, slaughtering them, driving them all the way up to the Pacific, right? And then the time of slavery, because we have plantation to take care of, we brought shiploads after shiploads of them to work. Later we'll find them bad people. We find them like animals. And then we need coolies from China to build freeways. When the freeways are built, or they are kicked out, so on and so forth, until Martin Luther King came to the point, until Rosa Parks. I would say even Rosa Parks got us the chance to sit the front row with the white people, mixed of black people and white people. The position, social position of the black have never been restored. Do you agree? Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
It's systematic, and it is like a cancer in the blood of the white Americans. The racism, the exceptionalism, the hegemony of the geopolitically situation. It's all, America is that last bastion. We Europeans learned. You said about Columbus being teared down, which is very sad. It's stupid, because the future has no relevance. The kids will not they will not know anything. So they see the statue, they know Christopher Columbus. You see, it would be the same thing. We Germans performed terrible deeds in World War II. It would be the same thing if Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, and Auschwitz, we would take down these concentration camps. We did not. We made museums to remind everything of what we have been doing. And these that's what this is counterproductive, to take these statues down, and it's very sad, and it shows how immature the people are who are doing this.
Thank you very much. You mentioned, you used the word immature, and I believe that we have a history of being immature ever since human history become recorded, right? And to my friend Joe Gardner, I know you have never had a chance to visit China, but Mr. Chris Nebe did, but many times, right? I came from China. I had a deepest impression, memory about the Chinese Cultural Revolution initiated by Mao Zedong and the CCP to the blood so deep that now every of my nightmare till these days will Cultural Revolution related, right? And that was the time they did similar, of course, 10 times worse than what we're doing now. They torn down the temples, they toppled statues, they even torn down many ancient buildings, and people killing each other, fighting each other, so on and so forth, all right? People dying every single moment, every single day. We're almost there. So you are familiar with the French Revolution, right? Almost the same, or about the same. So do you have the same feeling? Do you fear the same fear that I fear, that we might get to something even worse, my brother?
Well, I've been giving that a lot of thought lately because, yeah, you described the Cultural Revolution in China, the French Revolution, you know, what took place in Nazi Germany in the early part of the last century. Over and over again, you can see that there are some of those elements that are kind of taking place here right now today. I mean, we're like at the threshold of perhaps a revolution. I would hope that we can catch ourselves and stop ourselves before we go beyond that threshold and, you know, totally destroy ourselves, our country. But yeah, it's there. It's ever present.
I know, Chris, maybe you have been to China recently for quite some years in a row.
I've been there 15 years.
Do you see
getting
any
one film after the other? Yeah.
Huh?
I've been there for over 15 years, making
Over
one
30
film
years,
after the
you
other.
see lots
Now,
of China.
I should go now, but
Have
I
you
can't.
heard anything, any story about the revolution?
The Cultural Revolution? Oh yeah, now it's being, you see, let's not forget one thing. These kind of revolutions, they create a new beginning. And the great thing about America is it is so multicultural and has so much diversity that it rejuvenates itself. Even the Cultural Revolution produced Deng Xiaoping and changed China. It created the opening of China. You see, tragedy and always also has a new horizon and a new future. And America is a country which is young. It is not burdened by too much history, but the history which it has is very heavy, so it's trying to cope with it.
I agree with the part that you say indicating about the future of America. I disagree with the part that you say the Cultural Revolution has brought or related to any of the reopen of China. And the Cultural Revolution was the most criminal, the most should be most denounced. Mao Zedong and the CCP, the initiation of the Cultural Revolution was only to protect or to enhance their regime, right? Back to the United States, my dear friend, Joe Gardner, I heard that lots of people are getting paid to demonstrate.
Yes, there's.
You heard that too?
Yes, there's. I mean, I track social media frequently because it's important that I stay up to date with the issues, and I've seen accounts of buses being rented on behalf of protesters. I hear, and I've seen ads actually in Craigslist that say, earn $200, come out to, so-and-so, Minneapolis, for example, and protest. I see, all the precursor things, such as, putting blocks and bricks near protest sites. Somebody placed them there so that protesters can use them. What we're seeing are some very organized groups like Antifa and many others that are using the peaceful protests as a way to, riot and to do.
To your knowledge, or to your guess, see, sure enough, to your knowledge, to your guess, who is behind all of this?
That's the big question. Who is it? I think the Justice Department, in Washington, D.C., is investigating that. What we're talking about is an organized insurgency, a case of domestic terrorism. I believe as time goes on, the Justice Department will probably get to the bottom of who's been organizing these events and activities, and this anarchist movement. And you'll perhaps see some people being brought up on charges for insurrection.
Thank you very much. To Chris, do you think this situation, by so far, what you understand from what I told you, and he says in his statement, is being used, being utilized,
I'm sure it
being
is.
motivated by some political efforts?
I'm sure it is. And I'm interested to hear from you, Antifa. What is this actually mean? It means anti-fascist, but I mean,
right.
But
The very thing that they say they are acting as fascists. So
Yes.
it's very hard to understand what it is. But
The last thing I said, one thing is clear, and if your only judgment is that who will be benefiting from the bad situation, right?
yeah.
Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
I don't think it would be Donald Trump. I think that those elements are probably dead set of having Donald Trump become president for
Again.
another 4 years.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it may be a way of, dismantling
All
his
right,
presidency.
all right. We're over time already. I'm very sorry for that. But one thing is clear. We came to a conclusion, at least one political power is behind using this opportunity to help them for their political gains. My dear friend, please be vigilant. You may go demonstrate, you may go protest, never join the bad guys looting, all right? And the black life do matter, white life do matter, my life does matter too. Everybody's life matters, okay? Anyway, as far as we understand that we have a justice system, we have a healthy Department of Police, and we're okay. We're okay. Like the pandemic, we may be in the dark days of it. However, the days out, once out of the pandemic, the same bright sunshine. All right. Thank you for watching, my dear friend. We'll see you next time. And to my friend Joe Gardner, thank you very much for being with me. Thank you very much, Chris Nebe, for being with us. And I believe that I value very highly to both of your statements.
Thank you.
Thank you.